That's why they're ranked that high to begin with. The most anticipated season in the 3-1-5 in over 10 years starts with an easy win over Jacksonville.
Well, they're paving it quickly. 24-5, the Orange victorious in Game 1 of the 2025 season in dominant fashion.
Syracuse comes out on top over Jacksonville 24-5 as you just heard that final call from Luke Burgess. Sam Reese and Luke Burgess did an excellent job on today's broadcast, and Syracuse did an excellent job in today's game as well. But there can only be one player that's given the Pepsi Player of the Game, and it goes to the guy who had 4 goals and an assist. That's right. Give me my fellow Italian, Michael Leo. 4 goals and an assist. He had 6 shots on goal as well. This is a guy, talking with him the last few weeks, he is pumped up. He's ready to go for this season. Last year, losing to Denver in the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament, he is hungry. He's determined to win it all for his team. And listen, he's going to be a big part of his team's offense moving forward, and he did so today. 4 goals and an assist. Again, Michael Leo is your Pepsi Player of the Game. All right, Syracuse 24, Jacksonville 5. Syracuse 1-0 to start the season thanks to the home crowd at the JMA Wireless Dome. Our next broadcast, though, is not lacrosse. It's men's basketball. That will be tonight. Syracuse taking on California in California. Countdown to tip-off is at 9:30. Our tip-off, or rather, the tip-off is at 10 o'clock. And then our next broadcast for men's lacrosse is Monday, February 7th. Syracuse taking on Vermont. McClure Modeling countdown to face-off is at 5:30 with face-off at 6 o'clock. Some thank yous to hand out. Griffin Marcy, our producer. Hudson Ridley, our engineer. Nick Evans on radio replay. Josh Richardson writing all the great stats and nuggets in there for those radio replays as well. And our entire WAER sports desk. We can't thank you enough for putting together another clean broadcast. And to the listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in, whether it was through our online version, waer.org, or on the dial 88.3 FM, and now the live stream on Twitter, WAER Sports on X. You can listen to the entire broadcast. We'll be live streaming for all the lacrosse games moving forward. Now it's time for our double overtime with our hosts, Jish Sokolsky and Nico Horning. You can call in at 315-443-2011 to get your thoughts heard about this game and this dominant performance from Syracuse. And I can only imagine Jish and Nico have a lot to break down because there's about 30 goals in this game to kind of talk things over and see how it all played out. Nico, what a start for Syracuse. And if you're the Orange looking up at the mountaintop and what would be an NCAA championship, this is a great way to start things off.
Definitely a step in the right direction, Gino. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, spring is almost here, and Syracuse men's lacrosse is back. Number 2, Syracuse defeats Jacksonville 24-5. Before Nico and I really dig into this game, let me just give you a couple of the numbers. Gino did a great job reading these a little earlier. 58 shots, the most since week 2 last year against Colgate. 39 shots on goal, the most in 4 years, Nico. Only 8 saves because the defense did its job. A flat-out, top-to-bottom, dominant performance for the Orange. No better way to start the season.
It was a offensive flurry from the start. 2 quarters in particular. The first quarter and the third quarter were electric for the Syracuse offense. You outscore a team, I don't even care who the opponent is, 10-0 in the third quarter. That's how good this offense was today. They stayed through the course of the game as well. And then the defense, equally as good, only giving up 5 goals on the afternoon. But, you know, you're still playing Jacksonville at the end of the day, still waiting for your better opponents. What did this team learn? We'll break all of that down here on the double overtime.
Lots of winning, lots of learning, and plenty more lacrosse as this season rolls on. It's the double overtime taking you till the next for the next hour. I'm Jish Sokolsky alongside Nico Horning. Syracuse beat Jacksonville 24-5. We'll break it right down on the double overtime starting right now.
The The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the Double Overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
English charging at Cage, has an angle, shoots high, and connects with the back of the net.
Stevens ahead for English. 4 seconds left. English has to run in. He skips it. 5-hole and scores. 1 second left. We're headed to overtime.
Passes behind the cage. A cutter in front, a behind the back, and a score. Syracuse strikes first against number 1. And Finn Thompson with the theatrics.
And the lows.
Fine, caught in a world of trouble. He turns it over. Duke on the fast break. 1-on-none. Zawana shoots high and scores high.
Right down Broadway to English. Rings it off the pipe and out. How many of those have we seen today? Devastation. Denver beats Syracuse 10-8 in the 2024 NCAA Tournament quarterfinal.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
How do you not get up for this game? Like, I understand Duke is more angry, but Syracuse has probably more to prove than Duke does.
This did not look like previous games against Notre Dame. You can tell Syracuse is a completely different team as it's been for the last 3 to 4 seasons. When you're giving up 20 turnovers, when less than half of your shots are run goal, you can't be considering yourself a top 5 team. You can't be considering yourself back.
And I was shocked that they dominated this much, but this just shows you the difference with this team. One of the reasons Syracuse held on to win this game is because when they went up 12-8 in the fourth quarter, they kept winning faceoffs and were able to take a minute 20 off the clock, which limited the possessions Hopkins had in the fourth period.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or by tweeting us at WAER Sports Talk. It's the Double Overtime, and it starts right now.
It's the Double Overtime up until 3:30 alongside Nico Horning. I'm Jish Sokolsky. Number 2 Syracuse defeats Jacksonville 24-5. Nico, this was game 1 of Syracuse's march to championship weekend all the way in May. And if you want to get your voice heard, if you want your voice to ring true from day one, put your stamp on this championship winning team. I'm saying it right now. This team has what it takes to win a championship. And if you want your voice to be included with the many that will be talking about this Syracuse team for the next few months, please call into our show. 315-443-2011, the number to call. Or if you don't want to get your voice heard, you just want to get your words out there, you can always text us 315-556-3929. Nico, I know it's Jacksonville. I know it's an A-Sun opponent, and there are plenty of harder teams on the docket for Syracuse, but what this game showed me, what this offense showed me from day one, is it's ready to win a championship.
This team had to come out here and make a statement in game 1. And boy, did they really make more than a statement, I thought. I mean, right from the start, this team was scoring and scoring and scoring, and they did that all game to lead to 24 goals, 6-0 after the first quarter. They went on to outscore Jacksonville 5-2 in the second. How about a 10-0 third quarter? It just got better and better because we've seen this team in prior years, even against, let's just face it, some weaker opponents.
Sure.
They will get out to a fast start, and then they'll kind of let up as the game goes on, and the other team will creep back in a little bit. But for today, this team did not let the foot off the gas pedal, and it was an offensive explosion from the start of the whistle to the end of the game. And that's what impressed me most about this team today.
It was an offensive explosion. This was the most goals Syracuse has seen in the past 3 years since we've been on campus, and they only allowed 5 goals in the process. It really comes down to the offense exploding, as you were saying, Nico. I'm looking at Michael Leo, Luke Roa, Sam English. This midfield is elite. I think Michael Leo was probably the most impressive of the goal scorers today. Had 4 of them from creative angles, created space for himself with nice spin dodges. I love what Michael Leo brought to the table today. I think that he, maybe even more so than Joey Spallina, can be the focal point of this offense moving forward.
100% agree. And
Wow.
The reason why...
I thought I'd get a little bit of pushback.
No.
Joey Spallina.
I totally agree because I don't think Joey Spallina is the... I don't want to say he's the front runner of this team because I think you have many other scorers that you can go to. I look at Spallina as kind of your point guard, but I look at Michael Leo as your shooting guard, the guy that's going to get the goals, right? Spallina is the one that's going to get the assists. He's going to get the points, but the fact that he didn't score his first goal today until about 2 minutes to go in the first half says something, and that's a great problem for this team to have. The fact that you can put in other goal scorers and have Michael Leo, who was one of the 4 top scorers for Syracuse last year, and for him to have 4 goals today, it was very impressive. I don't need to see Spallina involved right away. I think that's a great problem for Syracuse to be facing with right away.
I like what you're saying about Spallina in a sense, that he is the point guard of this team, because last year they wanted him to be the quarterback of the team, right? The one who would stand behind X, much like a quarterback standing in the pocket, standing behind the net, looking for a cutter to pass to. Spallina was a lot more dynamic today, running up and down the wings, creating space over the middle for himself. He's probably the second best Dodger on the team behind Michael Leo, but the point guard is a much more dynamic, involved in the offense, and that's really the role Spallina played. Let's not downplay this either. Spallina still had 10 shots. He still had a hat trick. He still had 2 assists. Spallina still is the face of this team, but if we're talking secret weapons, if we're talking about who's going to step up to get this team to the next level where it hasn't been, this 4-goal outing from Michael Leo is a really, really promising sign. We've seen flashes of it in the past. We've seen Michael Leo be a star on this team. I just don't know if we've seen anything as dominant as we saw from Michael Leo in the first half today.
Well, last season, and that's a great point, because Leo was dominant right off the bat. Spallina took him a bit to get actually on the stat sheet, but once he did, like you mentioned, he was electric in the back half of the game. I think last season there was this tendency that Spallina needed to be the guy to step up all year. And there was a problem where he wouldn't play, superiorly, he wouldn't play great against top teams.
Sure.
And you needed some other guys to fill the void. I think now everyone has come to the conclusion that Spallina doesn't have to be the top guy every game, and you have other guys like a Michael Leo, who had those 4 goals today. You have Luke Roa, who had a great game today with a hat trick. Spallina ended up with a hat trick as well, but you didn't need him right away. You have other guys that you can go to, and I think Syracuse didn't trust that factor as much last year.
Right.
Whereas now you know who you got, and you can kind of go full force in that.
We can't quite judge the merits of Spallina in big games yet. This is still Jacksonville. Let's not get so far ahead of ourselves. But I like what you're saying. This is it's a balanced team when in the past it was almost Spallina and Hiltz or bust. I think that this team has a well-rounded offense this year.
That was my main takeaway from today, by the way, was the amount of versatility of players that scored for Syracuse. I mean, we've mentioned a few of them, right? Leo, Roa, Spallina, English, Thompson, the list goes on and on. That is the type of offense you want to see, because you can have a couple guys that can score 3-4 goals a game, but if you can get 4 or 5 different players to score multiple goals, that's what's going to be most important, so you're not relying on one guy over and over.
It's like you look at the championship DNA of teams that have won in the past. I think of Notre Dame the past 2 years. It wasn't Pat Cavanaugh or bust. They had Pat Cavanaugh, they had Jake Taylor, they had Chris Cavanaugh, Jordan Faison this last year. He's going to be a problem for the Orange this year. You need multiple guys who can shoulder the load. And I'm very happy, as much as it would have been cool to watch, that Joey Spallina didn't try one of those behind-the-back shots today. I love watching it. It's beautiful when it goes in. There's a time and place, and maybe this was the time and place for it against Jacksonville, but it shows a sign of maturity to me. It shows that Joey Spallina is looking to make the right play, not the play that's going to get him on Twitter or going crazy on Inside Lacrosse's media outlets. He's making the right plays because at the end of the day, it's not about how many Twitter clicks you get. It's about how many rings you win. And this Syracuse team is primed to make a championship run. If you agree with that, or if you still see any flaws in this Syracuse team, please interact with us any way you like. You can call us, 315-443-2011. You can comment on our socials at WAER Sports Talk on Twitter or at WAER Sports Talk on YouTube, where we are streaming live if you want to see our pretty faces. But the reason, Nico, I think this team and this win kind of sets itself apart from teams and blowout wins of the past is there was never really a moment of doubt, a moment where it seemed like the Syracuse offense was slowing down at all. The biggest blowout I can remember was the Manhattan game last year, and in the second half, sure, they called off the Dogs and the offense slowed down. As you were saying,
I didn't even
Nico,
see that today.
Exactly. When they called off the Dogs and they brought in the reserves, I mean, shoot, who had their first career goal today? Gibbs had his first career goal. Peyton Anderson, the true freshman. Owen O'Farrell, 40 of the 53 players on this Syracuse team played, and all of them, I think all of them, proved to be capable players in the Power 5 level.
We're all watching this game. We're waiting for that fourth quarter regression where you see this team maybe falter a little bit because they are putting in the backups. There was none of that. I mean, this team was literally dominant from the first quarter all the way through the fourth quarter. And you bring up that Manhattan game from last year, which, by the way, Mariano Rivera was in attendance.
Yes, he was. His son is a face-off specialist
Yes.
for Manhattan, so tune into that one later in the season. Syracuse is a rematch.
Very good point. But even in that game, there's this little maybe carelessness in the fourth quarter. There was none of that today. And that was the most impressive thing to me today, besides the offensive versatility, was how this team was absolutely dominant from start to finish. You know, they've been so good on paper all offseason, right? Number 2 behind Notre Dame. Can Syracuse take down Notre Dame, you know, with this season when they play them and make it this big championship run like everyone thinks they can do? But at some point, you got to show it on the field right off the bat and not have some of these tough losses like you did last year. Of course, plenty of season to go. It's just one game. But already, I think there is that level of like, okay, this is the standard that we know Syracuse can now play at. Can they live up to this and keep some of this composure against tougher teams down the line?
The offense just feels deeper this
It does.
year. It
100%.
really does.
And I think a lot of it goes back to the versatility of guys that you can go to. You know, if Splin is struggling one game, you got Leo, you got Roa. I mean,
and you know who
there's so many options, which is incredible.
You know the two names we haven't even mentioned yet who are going to be key contributors is Owen Hiltz.
Owen Hiltz, yep.
He had 2 goals today. And how about Trey Deer? 2 goals, 2 assists. He only had 2 goals all of last year as a true freshman. He's someone I'm also really looking forward to. He got plenty of playing time with the starters early on. You know, Trey Deer, I think, was most people's breakout candidate this year, and this is a very promising start for him. She showed a lot of composure. I think back to his first goal, took a nice pass from Spallina in front of the net, finished point-blank range. It's not like he was getting there uncontested. There were sticks in his face. There was a lot of traffic, and he showed plenty of composure. So even, you know, when this talented junior class moves on, you look at some of the guys who are next up, and I know I'm getting so far ahead of myself, but Trey Deer not only is the present, he's the future, and I mean, shoot, seeing how Syracuse ended last season, he could have been the past as well.
100%. You know, the sophomore attackman is going to be, I think, someone to watch for in the future, and if this team can get him going now, it's going to be really relevant. You brought up, you know, you brought up a couple of plays there, one with Deer. I thought one improvement from Owen Hiltz, to be honest. It was one of the first 3 goals that Syracuse had. Hiltz had scored, and what I noticed is a lot last year, these guys would come out from behind the goal line, they'd come above it, and then they'd tend to shoot it right away versus taking those extra couple of steps, letting yourself have a little bit more breathing room, and then putting it on the net and have maybe a little bit more of an angle. And I thought Owen Hiltz exemplified that really well, kind of creating his own shot and didn't have to rush it. I thought even Spallina had this problem last year where they'd rush shots a little bit, didn't get the best look. Yes, they had volume, but they weren't the best look. I think Hiltz and some others created their own shots today. They didn't shoot it right away. You know, when you think guys coming out from X, right? They tend to turn right away towards the goal.
Sure.
They're taking an extra 2 or 3 steps and then putting it on the net to create a little bit more space. I thought it was effective today.
I see what you're saying, Nico, and I really love that Owen Hiltz goal. I know the one you're talking about where you wrapped around. This was in the first quarter, you know, fadeaway shot.
Right.
Love to see it. I liked the team, but in
Will
general,
this work against every team? I'm not sure.
In general, I like the team's kind of aggressiveness early in the shot clock.
Yes.
I think that we saw decisive decision-making, which is something we haven't really seen from when these guys were underclassmen, when Leo, Thompson, Spallina were underclassmen the last 2 years. It seemed like there was a decisiveness, not only with the ball movement, but with the shot selection. Think back to the first goal of the game. Luke Roa had to drop to his knees and still delivered an on-target shot.
That was an incredible goal.
I love to see it.
You know
I
what?
don't care if that's smart shot selection or
Right.
not. If you know you can make that, if you know you can hit it, might as well do it. Empty out the tool bag in game 1. You don't want to put too much on film, but I mean, that doesn't quite matter. If you're hitting shots in game, then you are more likely to do it more often as the season rolls on.
Well, you brought up a little bit earlier how, you know, Spallina wasn't all flashy. He's kind of gotten away from that a little bit and really focused on helping his team win and maybe putting the stats on there as well. But to counteract that, the goal you just brought up with the Luke Roa goal, I mean, for that to be the first goal of the season, incredible. The guy's like laying out to his left side. He's on one knee, and he still gets a decent shot off it kind of skims towards the ground there. And I don't know how he made it, to be honest. But a super athletic goal. I think Luke Roa has a chance to be one of the most, I don't want to say breakout because he had a good season last year, but he always gets a little bit, slid under a Spallina, a Hiltz, a Leo. I feel like he's that fourth or fifth guy. I think he has a chance to be a top 2, top 3 goal scorer for Syracuse this season.
He was definitely more in that second line last year.
Right.
Jake Stevens was ahead of him last year. Sam English, Leo, and when Finn Thompson was in the midfield, they had to give him reps. Finn Thompson has since slotted to the attack. But I do agree, Nico. I think as soon as Roa scored that goal, I knew that Syracuse was not only winning this game, but Syracuse was making a postseason run. And if you think I'm crazy, tell me about it. Call into the show, 315-443-2011, or text into the show, 315-556-3929. It just goes back to the depth that we were talking about, Nico. When you can get this kind of production from Luke Roa, he had a hat trick today. Still no assists, but that's not really his bread and butter. Last year, he had 20 goals and only 1 assist. You don't necessarily need that from him, especially when you have incredible passers around him.
I was going
to
say.
Like Spallina, like Trey Deer putting up 2 assists. How about it? I love the way the ball moves in this game.
Even Owen Hiltz had a couple of assists as well. So, again, the offensive versatility today was extremely impressive, and I think they have a chance to take this multitude of offense into the next few games here to start this young season.
The offense was great, but there were still plenty of other aspects of the game. We're up against our first break, but when we come back, we're talking about goaltending, and we're talking about the face-off X. A lot of questions and some answers. We'll break it all down when we return on the Double Overtime.
Listening to the wings of a monarch butterfly. What a magical thought.
They arrive here on the Day of the Dead, which we celebrate here in Mexico, and a lot of the indigenous people believe that it's the souls of their ancestors that are returning, and it's very spiritual.
That's On Point with me, Meghna Chakrabarty.
From 7 to 8 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Start your Sunday mornings off right with Sunday Morning Gospel from 6 to 8 a.m. right here on WAER. Hosted by Cora Thomas, the program features some of the best local and national gospel artists. You'll hear everyone from Daryl Coley to the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir to the Winans family. More information is available online at waer.org. Join us Sunday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m. for Sunday Morning Gospel on 88.3 FM WAER.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at waer.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Roa striding towards goal, tough shot, he slips it home. The first goal of 2025 belongs to Luke Roa.
Oh yeah, the season opener for Syracuse men's lacrosse, and a big win, 24-5 over Jacksonville. Syracuse gets the season started on a high note today. Back here on the Double Overtime on WAER, Nico Horning and Jish Sokolsky. Happy to be with you breaking down this Syracuse win over Jacksonville. It's game one. We've said it time and time again, but a different feeling today compared to maybe prior season openers or prior games where you're playing a little bit less of a strong opponent. But a very good win today nonetheless for Syracuse, 24-5. All right, we talked a lot about the offense, the versatility of goal scorers today for Syracuse, but still some questions that remain unanswered. If you were listening to our WAER Sports Talk on Twitter, you may have heard these two questions, but Jish and I were talking about the goaltender situation earlier and the face-off situation, and despite the flurry of goals today for Syracuse, those two questions remain unanswered. What did you guys see at home with the new goaltender today for Syracuse in Jimmy McCool? Because, didn't have a lot of pressure overall with a weaker Jacksonville offense, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Please call us at 315-443-2011. You can also text us at 315-556-3929. I think our two questions that we proposed a little bit earlier still remain unanswered, which is a good problem.
Right.
Because this offense was so good today. But you want these next couple games for those to be answered before you kind of get into the really, really tough opponents.
Right. I know people are afraid to make takes about a team off of game one, off of big wins. And I think that when it comes to the faceoffs and goalies, that's where that logic can apply. With the offense, I think this is a championship caliber offense. But when it comes to the goalies and the faceoff men, listen, you got two guys who had somewhat limited reps last year who are now the faces of those positions. Jimmy McCool last year appeared in a couple games. He did appear in some big games when Will Mark was struggling in the ACC tournament game against Duke, but he didn't have really a chance to prove that he is the goalie of the future today, and that's a good problem to have, as you were saying. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's because the defense was just playing phenomenal. But in the few shots that he did see, 2 goals allowed, 6 saves, and one of those goals was on a power play when Syracuse only had 4 defenders. You can't really put too much stock in Jimmy McCool yet, but you also have no reason to blow the panic alarm at this point.
McCool allowed 2 goals in the first half on 4 shots. So it's not like the numbers don't blow you away or anything like that.
Of course not.
And also, we didn't have a chance to settle in because the ball was in the offensive zone for Syracuse for, 90% of the game, it seemed like. So you can't exactly make a definitive take on McCool, I don't think, at this point. But again, to go off that problem, you do want to see him get some shots on net. When is that going to come? Vermont? Maybe? Probably.
Not.
Right.
Definitely not Vermont.
Probably Towson is kind of that first game where you're really going to see if McCool can stand his ground. And again, if you're, if maybe you're new to this team, whatever, Will Mark is out of the equation this season for Syracuse.
Yes.
And he was a 2-time Tewaaraton finalist here in the last couple of years. So Syracuse has got to replace that goaltending, position. McCool won the battle, but I didn't see a whole lot out of him today. And I don't know what to make of that area yet because we haven't seen too much volume.
I think that is the one definitive thing we learned, that McCool is goalie 1. That was kind of the assumption throughout the entire offseason, who would replace Will Mark. Jimmy McCool always seemed to be next in line, especially because when he was taken out for the fourth quarter, you earned your rest. And Ippoliti came in, 3 goals allowed, 2 saves, and that's not even against the best and brightest Jacksonville had to offer.
Right.
I think, Ippoliti's still a little younger. He's still an underclassman. I think this is McCool's job to lose, and I don't think he did anything today to lose it. I just don't know if he has really...
I don't know if he learned much today.
I almost kind of want, because, Jacksonville only got 13 shots on cage today. I almost want for Syracuse to have a bad defensive day just so we can really see what they have in Jimmy McCool. Can Jimmy McCool prove that he can carry a defense? Because I would obviously rather see Syracuse shut down offenses left and right as they were doing last season, like they did today.
There'd be possessions last year where Will Mark had to defend 3-4 shots in a row in a span of a minute.
Yes.
That's the type of the type of offense from an opposing team that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
And it's only been 1 game, but you do want to see something of that nature. It's almost like you want a little bit of a defensive breakdown
Trial
next game.
by fire,
right.
almost.
Exactly.
Let's really see if McCool can stay ice cool when it gets hot. You know what I mean?
100%. Which the defense we haven't even talked about today in Syracuse's season-opening win over Jacksonville,
Spectacular.
24-5. Incredible. Nico Horning and Jish Sikulski here on the double overtime. What were your thoughts on the defense? Whether you were in the dome, whether you were at home, we'd love to hear them. 315-443-2011, the number to call in. And Jish, I know we were talking about this a little bit earlier during the game, that I know you thought the defense was almost equally impressive as the offense, if not better. And when you're allowing 5 goals total, that includes 2 shutout periods, the first quarter and the third quarter. An incredible day for the defense, and I don't think it can get understated.
I think in that also is the footprint of Mikey Grace coming on in and replacing Sam Alexo, big 48 with the long pole. He was reading the defense phenomenally. I think back to the first quarter, he just intercepted a pass right in front of cage. He's going to be one of the more valuable defenders for Syracuse moving forward. And I honestly think he's not even the best one on the team because Riley Figueres and Billy Dwan are the other ones standing right next to him on the defensive side. All three of those guys have cases to be All-American. So, I mean, Jimmy McCool didn't get tested today, but you can sleep well at night knowing, okay, well, how many games will Jimmy McCool actually be tested? I would, of course, love to see him take over a defense. I would love to see a day where we see 4, 5, 6 straight saves from McCool. I just don't see that happening given the defensive phenomenal, the prowess of Dwan, of Figueres, and of Grace.
Now, granted, Jacksonville didn't really have many shots.
Sure.
And
that's, I think,
put on the net in this
cause
game,
and effect.
Only 13. Syracuse had 39 on the net. So, 100% agree with everything you're saying. Even the freshman Peyton Anderson, I thought he was impressive today on both sides of the ball. I mean, he got right in the grill of one of the JU attackmen, and I think that was one of the premier things today. You were talking about it with Dwan and some of these other guys that they just gave zero space to any of these attackmen that Jacksonville had. And for Anderson, a freshman, to have that type of tenacity and toughness to go after some of these players, I thought that was something that kind of the younger guys could take away from today,
I don't know if Peyton Anderson will be getting much work on defense moving forward. I mean,
but I'm saying, like, there was
he had that really nice goal, though, right?
Yeah, no, he did.
We shielded off the defender, flipped around him. Really professional stuff. On defense, though, I'm more looking at those big three. But I think the defensive middies that were also brought in, number 50 for the team, Ryder Ochoa, He's mostly a face-off guy, but he was playing phenomenal defense. I just really love the aggression Syracuse was playing with today. I think back to like that Sam English play where he checked the dude into the trash can on the Jacksonville sideline. I mean, he goes to show when Syracuse thinks of the Jacksonville, right?
There was some physicality at the end of the game.
And that's a great recipe for success for goalies because if the 11 in front of you are making plays and are setting the tone, then what do? You stand there, you do some cardio, you do your pivots.
Right.
You don't have to make any saves. Pressure's kind of off at that point.
100%. How about the face-off department? That was another question that we had proposed before this game. It was how would the goaltending duo kind of step into Will Mark's place, and then the face-off department where you lose Mason Cone from last year. How does John Mullen look and kind of replace Mason Cone's absence? If you want to give us your takes on that, please give us a call at 315-443-2011. We're talking about the Face-Off X here today, and Mullen was a little underwhelming at first.
Yeah.
It seemed like it didn't matter because Syracuse's defense was able to get the ball right back right away and obviously score. So it wasn't a big concern as of today, but I could see against some tougher opponents down the line where that might turn into a little bit of an issue going forward.
It might just be rust. I'm not ready to be concerned about Johnny Mullen because we saw how good he was as the second fiddle in the Face-Off X last year. What I'm really concerned about, because John Mullen, he's super big. He's really good at shielding off defenders. He's just kind of slow-footed. So when a ball gets really far behind him, I think those quicker, face Fogos with more leverage can shield him off, as we saw a couple times in the first quarter. Syracuse started 4 for 10 from the face-off dot earlier today. I'm worried about what happens when Mullen commits a face-off violation, and with this new NCAA rule, someone else has to come on and do face-offs, because we had a little platoon, as Gino was saying in Orange Overtime, there was a platoon of Orange face-off men that were backing him up, and the first one that came in the first quarter when Mullen committed that face-off violation was Johnny Richuza, and if that name sounds familiar, oh boy, 2023, he was the main guy, him and Jack Fine. He only won 41% of his faceoffs. That was one of the worst in the nation. A big reason why the defense was sluggish that year, because they always had to play on defense, and why the Orange allowed a ton of goals was, you don't want to blame it all on one guy, but Johnny Richuza definitely didn't help that team. So you got to hope that John Mullen in his second year, true sophomore, shows the discipline to stay in and doesn't have to take reps off at the Face-Off X.
Mullen 64% today at the Face-Off X, 14 for 22. He started 8 for 14, so win one, lose one almost, and then he regained his caliber there a little bit later. Also had a career high 11 ground balls. So
very good.
You mentioned Richuza, and I think that name can scare a lot of Syracuse fans,
sure.
Based on his performance in that season. But that might be one of the takeaways from this game is we know the offense is so good for Syracuse. We've talked about the versatility of scores, but also the faceoff X and that new penalty or the new rule with the, if you do have a violation, you got to replace John Mullen. That could be a problem going forward, and I think Syracuse is going to have to really crack down on that to make sure that they can keep Mullen in there as long as possible.
Nico, I think when your biggest concern on your team is your backup Fogo,
something's going right.
So I think you're doing pretty well. However, it is still a concern considering, it was never a concern last year because Mason Cone was one of the best face-off men in the country, and then behind him was this howitzer freshman John Mullen. So now that John Mullen is given the keys to that face-off X, you got to wonder, can he shoulder that load by himself, or will he get gassed? Will he need extra help? We saw Mason Cone missed the first NCAA tournament game against Towson, and John Mullen played very well. But that was also with a season full of experience being the backup, finally get your shot. There's a lot of mental adversity that happens, especially at the face-off dot as seasons wear on. If you're not winning face-offs, that can pile on your mental. Especially if you're playing someone who's just more physical than you all game long. You don't really get that breather like Mason Cone was able to get last year when John Mullen could come in. It's just a little tiny whisper in the ear of Syracuse. Okay, can John Mullen put this face-off unit on his back? He'll will have to, from what we've seen today.
It's part of the mentality that you got to have in this sport. Nico Horning, Jish Shikulski breaking things down here on the double overtime. Syracuse beats Jacksonville 24-5 in the home opener. And Jish, we've talked about a couple of issues that maybe this team could have coming into today and maybe during the first part of the season. We've expressed those. But how does this team take today's win into the next couple of games? If you want to chime in and give us your thoughts, please call us in at 315-443-2011. You can also text us at 315-556-3929. Check out our live stream as well. That's also up on Twitter and YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. So no reason for you not to be able to find us in any capacity that you'd like to here today. All right, you get the statement win, right, over Jacksonville. Then you play Vermont on Friday back in the Dome. That should be somewhat of a similar vibe of a commanding win, you'd think.
You would hope.
Right, based on the opponent on Vermont. But then the 3 games after that is really where my eyes go to. You play the 17th ranked team in the country in Towson. That's on the 10th of February. Then it's Maryland on the road, 6th ranked team right now. And then Harvard, also a top 20 team right after that. So to me, today and the game against Vermont on Friday are your 2 get-ready games for 3 tough oppositions that you have to play here in the first 5 games of the season.
Syracuse surely got ready today. If nothing else, they got ready today. 24 goals, again, that's something they have not scored in the entire time we've been here. The last time they had more than that they had today was in 2022, the season opener of that one as well. This was better than any tune-up game that we've ever seen. I mean, when we were freshmen, it was a 7-5 win over Vermont. That was troubling then. Last year, the 20-7 win over Vermont was good, but I don't think anybody really made too much of this. There's a lot of stock in this Syracuse team now, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't just the young team anymore. This is a team that has to go out there and make a statement, and honestly, it's feeling more and more, especially considering the results of last year, like it's championship or bust. So yeah, you're right. This is maybe a tune-up game. And next game will also most likely be a tune-up game. These 3 games, Towson, Maryland, Harvard, if Syracuse isn't going 3-0 there as the number 2 team in the country, then there's fraud watch. But for right now, I don't see it happening. I see Syracuse winning all 3 of those games, and I'm having trouble picking out many games, considering the performance today, that they will lose this year. Of course, you have Notre Dame down the stretch, tough opponent. Duke down the stretch, always a thorn in the side, even though a little weaker this year without Brendan O'Neill. North Carolina's young and getting better, sure.
Hey, they're still good.
But from what I've seen today, I don't care that it's Jacksonville. Jacksonville, let's not forget, was a top 10 scoring offense in the country last year. I don't care. So this Syracuse team showed me enough today to make me think they can beat almost any ranked team they play.
Hey, plenty of games to go, plenty of ranked opponents to play, but my eyes go to these almost next 3 games after Vermont on Friday. All right, when we come back, our talk reporter, Alex Burstein, is in the Dome. He was at Gary Gates' press conference, and he'll break things down and tell us about the environment, about this team in person today. That'll be when we come back here on the Double Overtime. Don't go anywhere. Syracuse beats Jacksonville 24-5. We'll be back in just a moment.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
Listening to the wings of a monarch butterfly. What a magical thought.
They arrive here on the Day of the Dead, which we celebrate here in Mexico, and a lot of the indigenous people believe that it's the souls of their ancestors that are returning, and it's very spiritual.
That's On Point with me, Meghna Chakrabarty.
From 7 to 8 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Joey Spallina, near side GLE, flings a pass, in front, Deere shoots, scores!
Syracuse definitely held the line today, beating Jacksonville 24-5. Welcome back to the Double Overtime. We've got you for another 20 minutes. I'm Josh Sokolsky alongside Nico Horning, and we've got a third member to yap along with us. It's getting a little chilly in here, Nico. We've got our reporter from the Dome, Alex Burstein. Alex, welcome aboard. How you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good, and the Syracuse men's lacrosse team feeling extra good. Just got out of the press conference, and this team, they didn't even seem very surprised about the victory. They're very confident in themselves, but, I mean, a near-perfect victory we saw here today.
Well, Alex, before we go any further, it seems like you might have been surprised about this victory. You said last night on Sports Night, this game could be close, and I don't know about you, but I don't think a 19-goal game is very close. What to you made you think it was going to be close, and then what didn't happen?
I mean, this Jacksonville team came into today's game with 4 of their top 5 scorers returning from last year. I mean, that is a lot of talent that came back for Jacksonville and thought that was going to get going on the offense. The problem, I mean, Syracuse's defense was so much better than I was expecting. Everyone
100%.
all offseason was talking about this Syracuse offense is insane. They have such good scores, which obviously is the case. But this defense today, suffocating. I mean, at the end of the second quarter, there was back-to-back possessions where there was shot clock violations forced. Syracuse had none of those the entire day. This defense is playing up to an all-star level, and if that keeps up, as you said, Jish, this is going to be an extremely hard team to beat.
Alex, Jish and I were saying all game. I mean, the offense obviously took us all, not by surprise, but just the amount of tenacity that they had from the first quarter all the way through the fourth quarter. They didn't let up was impressive, but it was the defense that was the backbone of this team today. Was it the toughness? Was it just everyone was on the same page? I mean, what did you see, in person that allowed this defense to be so good and really limit the number of shots that Jacksonville had overall?
It was just perfectly matched defense. Anytime someone got the ball, there was a defender immediately on them. They had perfect man-to-man defense. We were talking to Billy Dwan after the game. He was very impressed with the guys he's been playing with and also some of the newcomers to this squad. They got a few transfers in, some freshmen who made impact. This is a team that has a lot of experience. This is the junior class now that was so highly touted on offense, but also on defense. It's really come all together, and today they were extra tough on defense. And also, what Coach Gates said after the game was, last year, a new defensive coordinator, and John O'Dearna, who was kind of figuring out the defense, but before the game they were talking, and he was like, last year I was nervous. Now I just trust my defense. This defense knows their plays. They know what they're doing, and that showed on the field today.
Well, Alex, it seems like you know what you're doing, too, and that's a calling card for anybody at home. If you have a question for Alex, the closest man you could get to the action today of a championship contending team, feel free to call in and ask him a question, as me and Nico are doing. 315-443-2011, the number to call. Or you can text in 315-556-3929. And Alex, I mean, to me, sometimes watching the game, I didn't know if it was like a deliberate strategy for Jacksonville, kind of switching gears here. We talk a lot about Syracuse, but for Jacksonville, it seemed you mentioned how they would get shots off later in the shot clock. I don't know if that was necessarily excellent Syracuse defense, which was the case, but it almost seemed like that was Jacksonville's kind of strategy going into, try and make McCool nervous and then shoot late, but it just never worked.
It didn't work, and it's also a hugely different thing than what they did last year. This team last year was one of the fastest offensive, most efficient offenses in the NCAA, and also John Galloway talked after the game, and he was like, this Syracuse team is just so dynamic, both on offensive and on defensive side of things. They know how to stretch things out really well, and I think it was not their choice to be so backed up in this game. They just could not find the shots. You talk about McCool. I don't even think we got a really good gauge today on if he's a great goalkeeper.
That's
he had
what we
some
were
good
saying
saves.
too.
That's literally what we were talking about a few minutes ago, Alex, McCool, I don't know, like you couldn't make anything out because Syracuse was just basically in its offensive zone for the majority of the game, and we didn't get that stretch from McCool. Alex, you didn't hear us a little bit earlier, but we were talking about how, Will Mark would have stretches where he'd make 3 or 4 big saves in the span of a minute, and we're just not getting that yet because obviously Jacksonville's offense today was not great, but I'm sure that'll come down the line, but we just don't know what McCool can bring to the table. What did you see from just his size or I don't know, maybe pregame warm-ups, just something that maybe you noticed from McCool versus a Will Mark in prior years?
Yeah, he has great size in the goal. That's pretty obvious if you just look at his stats and how tall he is. But there was the thing where in the second quarter, the first shot that came at him, that was a really, really good shot. It just blew past him. And that just comes as he's been a few years removed from playing really high competitive lacrosse. He was great in high school, played against some really good high school teams, but he hasn't faced consistent competition for a couple years now. He got some appearances last year. I think in the post-game presser, Gate was saying they're pretty confident in McCool right now. He was asked about that, and he said, we took a while to make our decision, but we're happy with McCool. We are happy with the skill set that he brings to this squad. But there's still a lot of question marks, and I think it might not even be next week against Vermont. It might have to be a couple weeks from now when Syracuse plays teams like Maryland and when they get into ACC play that you really see, is Jimmy McCool up to the task? I'll caveat that by saying if Syracuse is scoring 24, 25 goals in a game, it doesn't matter what your goalkeeper does because this offense is just so good.
Pretty confident, but not fully confident. And yes, as good as this offense is, you still got to have a good goaltender. When you're playing some of these really, really good opponents, you're gonna have those possessions where you just have to defend. The defense is there. I don't know about the goaltending. That's one thing that is gonna scare me a little bit, Jish. I know you can't make it. You can't make an assessment today,
right?
But I could see that being a little bit of an issue going forward.
I don't know if it scares me. Like we saw like one really good save from Jimmy McCool. Like in that third quarter when he dove down like to his left side, put his body on the line, set up a Trey Deer goal as well.
All right, but it was 1 in 4 quarters. You can't make it right.
Of course.
3 quarters. He played
yes, it is one save, but to say I'm scared, I'm not scared about Jimmy McCool. I just need to see more. That's what I'm saying. But on the other end, the other goalie, Jacksonville's Rocco, it seemed like after the first shot, he was hobbling. He took a shot right to the knee. I don't want to downplay what Syracuse did offensively because obviously this was their best performance in years, but would it be a little less dominant? Are we talking a different story if Rocco doesn't get hobbled?
I think it would be a slightly different story. I think Syracuse's offense is probably the best that Galloway has faced in his, not Galloway, excuse me, the best that Rocco has faced in the past couple of years. That being said, in the post-game presser, Galloway said it really was that first shot. He was limping throughout the first half. He's a strong guy, though. He wanted to stay in for the second half, and the coaching staff eventually said, you know what, we're not going to lose our starting goalkeeper in the first game of the season, especially when we're down by 10, 15 goals. But last year, he was one of the top 10 goalkeepers in the nation in terms of save percentage. He's done really good stuff against really good teams. Obviously, they're not in as strong of a conference, but, they were playing Utah last year. That's a team Syracuse plays most years. So Rocco, a very skilled goalkeeper. It's unfortunate to see him get injured, especially so early on in the season. Definitely hampered the result a little bit for Jacksonville, but as you said, this Syracuse offense is so good, they're going to be doing that against pretty much any caliber of goalkeeper this year.
Under 30% save percentage for Rocco, and a lot of that had to do with the Syracuse. He got hurt, and you maybe can take off maybe 3 or 4 goals if he is playing at full strength, but with that Trey Deer and Joey Spallina connection, I know you want to talk about that a little bit, Alex. there's very few goalies in the country that can keep up with that.
I mean, these two remind me of like 2016, 2017 Chino Hills high school
Oh,
basketball.
wow.
I
You're
mean,
talking the Ball brothers right now?
It's just so high quality lacrosse. If you put Trey Deer in front of a goalkeeper, like if I was that goalie, I'm running away. He will do disgusting things in front of the goal. Everyone knows Joey Spallina can do things. These two in high school were pumping out highlight reels that were going viral, whether you're a lacrosse fan or not. I mean, these are two really skilled guys. They've played box lacrosse together, and you can see that connection on the field. And when both of them are going, I mean, Deer was a freshman last year, didn't get that much playing time, only 2 goals. He had 2 goals today, so Deer really finding his own, and that is a dynamic duo for this Syracuse squad.
So are you calling these guys the Ball brothers of lacrosse? I
Hey,
have to know.
It might be. I mean, the Kavanaughs are out now, so there's no more brothers, so it's possible.
Trey Deer and Joey Spallina, you heard it here first. Alex Burstein compares them to 2016 Chino Hills. That would make me Onyeka Okongwu, of course. If you agree with that take, if you have any other takes about who Joey Spallina and Trey Deer remind you of, you can call into the show at 315-443-2011, or you can text us 315-556-3929. You don't have much time left to do it. Only 10 minutes left of this show, but please feel free to interact with us. It was a great game all around. Alex, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day and reporting for us from the Dome. It's really a pleasure having you on, Alex.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Appreciate it, Alex.
Of course. That was Alex Burstein, the WAER reporter today from the Dome after Syracuse defeated Jacksonville 24-5. The double overtime alongside myself, Jish Sokolsky, and Nico Horning. Only got you about 10 more minutes. Really great stuff from Alex, but now it's time for you and I, Nico, to really get into our final words.
Let's do it.
I have a lot to say about this team. I have a lot of good to say about this team. And when it comes to Syracuse basketball or Syracuse what have you across campus, this school really needs some team that can be a beacon of hope, and I think this team deserves more eyeballs. And the reason I think this team deserves more eyeballs, I danced around it a little bit to start the show. I've been very careful with my language, but I'm throwing that out the window. Let me look at the crowd for this one. Syracuse men's lacrosse. By the time the 2025 season ends, when we get to Memorial Day 2025, it will be the Syracuse Orange lifting the cup as the national champions of college lacrosse. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I know it's Jacksonville. I know that Syracuse has not played the toughest opponent yet, but what I saw was a bulletproof team with a phenomenal defense, an offense that can score from all over, and take a look at some of the other contenders around the country. Notre Dame lost a ton of great contributors. Liam Emptiman, Pat Cavanaugh, 2 towards-on finalists, and the winner are out of there. They're a much weaker and unproven team. Syracuse has a lot more experience. Look at the number 3 team, Princeton, right behind Syracuse. That's a one-man show. Let's be real, everyone. Coulter Mackesy cannot lead Princeton to greatness by himself. Teams like Maryland, their midfield's gutted. Duke lost a ton of talent. UNC is still young and unproven. Virginia lost a ton of talent. Cole Kastner, Schellenberger, all the players that made Virginia great in the past. This Syracuse team, it's their time right now. It's been almost 20 years since Syracuse last won this national title. They're bringing back the mullets. They're bringing back the 80s. They're bringing back championship-winning lacrosse to the Hill. A Syracuse team that has one of the best attacks in the country, one of the best midfields in the country, and one of the best defenses in the country. Unproven in net, unproven at X. Sure, this is a team that can pick itself up with its strengths, and its weaknesses don't even really feel like weaknesses. Syracuse, Nico, is going to be the national champions when all is said and done.
Man, all that after game 1.
All of that after game 1.
All of that after the opening game against an unranked
Nico.
opponent.
I
against
don't care.
Jacksonville.
If you have guys like Peyton Anderson, a true freshman, coming in and scoring goals, and he looked comfortable doing it, if Wyatt Hoddle is scoring goals, I love this team's odds, not only to make a run. They have postseason experience now. That's not an excuse. They have a team led by upperclassmen now. That's not an excuse. Joey Spallina's a junior. Michael Leo's a junior. Finn Thompson's a junior. Owen Hiltz is a senior. We've got leadership on this team. There is a mindset. There is a drive on this team, and I am 100% confident. I'm putting all my eggs into this basket. And shoot, if I'm wrong, then I know this will play over the airwaves for years to come, but Syracuse will win this national title.
Hey, I'm not disagreeing with you, but the way they are going to make that national championship, let alone win that national championship. And I can't even believe I'm even getting on this topic right now because it is the only first game. But since it's your final word, my final word will correlate into your final word, and that will be the offensive versatility that Syracuse has this year. I think one of those guys that scored a flurry of goals today would be Luke Roa, had 3 goals today for a hat trick for Syracuse. He will end this season on the Syracuse roster as a top 3 goal scorer on this Orange squad.
Wow.
Yes, I believe that Roa he's kind of gotten a bit under-talked over the last season. And I think there are other guys that, of course, can produce more goals. We've seen it. I mean, Michael Leo had 4 goals today. Spallina ended up also having a hat trick. And then Sam English, Owen Hiltz, Finn Thompson are kind of your main go-to goal scorers. But I think Luke Roa can really take that step up this season for Syracuse. We saw it right off the bat today. He scored the opening goal. You know what? You made your take on this team making the national championship because of an opening win. I'm taking Luke Roa being a top 3 goal scorer because of an opening goal with that wicked and crazy goal that he scored, basically laying on the ground right off the bat in this game. I think that he can be, you look at the guys that Syracuse is bringing back from last year. Spallina, Hiltz, Thompson, Leo, Roa as well, but Roa was not in that top 4 or top 5 goal scorer conversation. I think he's going to take a big leap this year, and I think having that versatility, whether it's him, whether it's others, is going to what makes this team go to the national championship or make a far run in the playoffs. Wow. So, again, Luke Roa, a top 3 goal scorer. Stamp it for Syracuse by the end of the year.
He was a top 3 goal scorer today. He was one of 3 players with a hat trick for the Orange behind Leo and Spallina. Now, Nico, I got a question about that. If he's a top 3 goal scorer, who joins him in the podium?
That's a good question. I'll go Michael Leo. I think you would agree with that as well.
I would 100% agree with that.
I'm going to go Leo, and then it comes down to do you want to throw Hiltz in there or you want to throw Spallina in there?
Are you going to tell me right now that Joey Spallina is not a top 3 goal scorer on this team?
I'm going to go with Hiltz.
You think
I'm going to go with Hiltz? I'm going to go
Joey Spallina.
Owen Hiltz. I'm going to go Michael Leo, and I'm going to go Luke Roa. No order. Top 3 goal scorers for Syracuse. I think Spallina's the 4th guy. We saw a lot of assists from him, last season. I think he's going to continue to facilitate this offense, but not necessarily force himself to put in the shots if he doesn't have to. And again, we've talked about it time and time again. That is a great problem for this team to have. Maybe Spallina ends up being the best goal scorer on this team. Maybe he ends up being the 4th best. Either way, if Spallina doesn't force anything this season, Syracuse's offense will be better off. And I don't care where he ends up. That's just where I'm predicting for right now.
It's not to say, Spallina's a bad goal scorer.
No,
I mean, Nico,
I just think it doesn't need to.
He was first his freshman year and was second his sophomore year. He's a junior now, and he had a hat trick today as well.
Hey,
listen.
They got options. They got options.
If you were going to tell me Michael Leo drops out, sure, whatever. I disagree. I think the top 3 is going to be Leo, Spallina, and Hiltz.
You on Hiltz? Okay.
The Roa take, that is bold, and I'm excited to revisit that as the season rolls on. I appreciate your confidence in Luke Roa, but even if he isn't a top 3 scorer, he would just be a great contributor. He had 20 goals last year. He would be a great contributor to a championship-winning team.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, if you want to hear a little bit more about this team's path to the championship, you can keep listening to WAER all season long. It starts with our next lacrosse broadcast. That is number 2 Syracuse versus Vermont. This Friday, February 7th, McClure Remodeling Countdown to Face-Off is at 5:30 before a 6 o'clock start. And then the double overtime, goes until 9:30. I'll be on that one again alongside Adam Gotkin. But before even that, we've got some basketball to get to. And that goes on tonight. It's a classic WAER doubleheader. Syracuse takes on California men's basketball tonight at 10 o'clock. Countdown to tip-off is at 9:30, and a double overtime until 2 in the morning, please.
It's another late one.
Yeah, drink your Celsius, drink your coffee. That's going to be with Nate Cunningham and Ian Nicholas. Don't worry, they will keep you up all night. Don't worry about it. The Ostrom Avenue podcast is another great way you can interact with Syracuse lacrosse. You can listen to the most recent interview with Tim Leonard and Terry Foy. You can listen to that wherever you get your podcasts or on WAER.org. One of the hosts of that is our producer today. A big thank you to AJ Myers, and of course to our engineer and brand new sports director Hudson Ridley. Thank you very much. Of course, a big thank you to our reporter Alex Burstein from the Dome and our sports talk desk Timmy Weiss, Rahil Jaswal, and Nate Martin, making sure everything goes smooth behind the scenes today. Nico, thank you so much for joining me here today. One final time, Syracuse defeated Jacksonville 24-5. Saying so long, I'm Jim Sokolsky alongside Nico Horning. We'll see you at 10 o'clock for basketball.